Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Smith College Libraries Talk Today with Dr. Theanne Griffith. My name is Kat Hanula, and I'm the first year's Experience and Engagement Librarian.
Hi, and I'm Maureen Callahan, and I'm the curator of the Sophia Smith Collection of Women's History, which is an archives that helps tell stories of people changing the world on behalf of women and other gender minorities.
We're honored to introduce all of you to Dr. Theanne Griffith, a Smithy alum from the class of 2008. She is an assistant professor in the Department of Physiology and Membrane Biology at the University of California at Davis. She is also the acclaimed children's book author of the Magnificent Makers series. Dr. Griffith is a graduate of Smith and Northwestern University.
And while she was at Smith, Dr. Griffith was involved in the Black Student Alliance, Smith Democrats, the underrepresented science students, and worked at the Mwangi Cultural Center as a coordinator.
So hello, Dr. Griffith. We are so excited to have you here and welcome. We are especially excited to speak to you today because we want to connect the work of being a scientist and a writer to experiences doing library research. Our first question is, how did you use the library and help from the librarians when you were a Smith College student? Could you share a little bit about how your research journeys have changed throughout your life as a thinker and a learner?
First, I just want to say thank you so much for inviting me here. I'm really happy to share my experiences at Smith, in particular as they pertain to use of the libraries. I'm a huge Smith lover, so I'm really happy to be here today. So thank you again for the invitation. So in terms of how I use the library, I have always, since I was a young child, enjoyed going to the library. Like I was the kid who went to the public library and checked out a stack of books this big. So when I came to Smith, I was definitely going to be continuing that habit. And as a science student, I actually spent a lot of time in the science library. And I really fell in love with the space. I used to actually, a dirty secret of how I used the libraries was that I had an 8 a.m. Cell bio class and then a 10 a.m. organic chemistry class. And I actually would take a small little like cat nap in the back of the science library in between those two to help recharge myself. But I definitely found the library system extremely useful. I particularly, some of my friends were more social learners, and I'm actually a solitary learner a little bit. So I loved the little carols that the library had, and I would sneak back there with all of my stuff and lay everything out and really just kind of dig in and get to work. I always found that the librarians were super helpful, especially as a science major when I was looking up for the first time really in my career, primary scientific literature. I was really unfamiliar with how to do that. I didn't know much about PubMed, for example. And so they were really critical, especially as I progressed through the major into my upper level courses and helping me find those materials. I also love the fact that they had all of the textbooks that I needed there and available for checkout. I actually bought the textbooks myself as well, but they're heavy and I didn't necessarily want to carry them everywhere. So I definitely found a lot of utility in the fact that they had the textbooks there that I could check out and use as I was doing the problem sets or homework or just studying whatever. So I think I answered your question properly.
Thank you so much for that answer. And just sort of as a plug for the libraries for anyone listening, we still, of course, have a lot of sources on reserve, even when we're in this remote environment. So I hope that students will reach out if you need help getting access to text, because that's definitely something the library can provide. So I know Kat and I have a lot of questions. I hope that other participants, if you have questions for Dr. Griffith, let us know. You can use the blue hand raise emoji and we'll invite you to unmute yourself and you can ask your question. If you prefer to not use your voice to ask your question, that's great too. You can put a question in the chat and we'll make sure that it gets asked and answered. So I know that students are probably at the point in the semesters where papers are about to become due. And so we're wondering about your process as a writer. How do you work through ideas and stay motivated? And do you have any advice for Smith students who are doing writing?
Yeah, so writing is definitely a very personal thing and everyone does it differently. I think that is probably the biggest lesson that I've learned as a writer or is figuring out how I write best. And I'm a very organized person. I'm kind of a little type A. And so I thought that maybe I would write best by making very extensive outlines. And I think that's something that I have abandoned a little bit, actually. Because for me, where my ideas come from the actual process of writing itself. So another thing that I've learned is that there's a big kind of activation hump. There's my scientist coming out, but there's kind of, it's difficult when you're writing to get started sometimes. So another good piece of advice is just to start writing, even if you don't know where anything is going. Just getting those ideas on paper is really critical. So I've transitioned from doing very kind of detailed outlines to just kind of very broad strokes outlines. What I found is that each style of writing, whether it be a research paper or a chapter book series, kind of has a flow. And there are pieces to the writing, like there are sections that need to be in each of those types of writing. And so what I tend to do is figure out, okay, for my introduction, let's say I'm writing a research paper, my introduction, what is the purpose of this section? What do I need to achieve in this section? And then I kind of start making some like bulleted ideas. And then I just write it. I don't really plan out what I'm going to write, but more so what I need to achieve in each part of the writing. I take a very similar approach for writing my kids' books. I know that there are 10 chapters. I know that something needs to happen specific in each one of those chapters. And once I have that kind of down, then I just get to writing. In terms of the research side of things and kind of the preparation, sometimes it's really beneficial when you're starting just to sit there and think. I think that a lot of emphasis is put on doing when it comes to writing and like the active side of research, but there's a very important side, which is sitting and thinking, you know, what are the ideas that you want to convey? What are your opinions on those ideas? You know, what do you envision for whatever it is that you have to write? You know, and again, that's going to look different depending on what you're writing, depending on what the topic is. But I want to place a high value on, you know, staring into space, because sometimes that is helpful too. So once you kind of have done your thinking and your staring, it is definitely important to figure out what resources you need and who can help you get those. And so again, this is going to be major dependent. This is going to be class dependent. This is going to be project dependent. But identifying, you know, what resources you need is going to be critical. And then if you don't know how to get those resources, just ask, because there are people that are literally paid to help you. It is literally their job, and I will say their pleasure to help you. So if you're not even sure where to start, just start with the first person you see when you walk into the library, and they'll direct you. So don't be too shy, go for it.
I just want to add on that it is totally our pleasure to help all the students who come to us. It's the best part of our day, honestly, is talking to students and just listening to what they're working on. Honestly, I learned so much. I just had a new research appointment today where I learned more about, you know, gender fair language and the evolution from gender neutral to gender fair language. And I think so it's the best part of our day. And sometimes I have students who tell me I didn't want to bother you, or I didn't want to interrupt anything. You are not interrupting anything. That is literally why we're here. So please come talk to us. So that's all. I'm just going to leave it at that, but please come talk to us.
And sometimes I want to add a recent experience I had. It wasn't at Smith, actually. This was when I was working at Columbia University, and I was submitting a laboratory protocol. And the person that I had to submit it to came back, because, you know, everything's very tightly regulated. So they came back with some questions about why I had to do it this way instead of this way. And I didn't really know. And they told me to go speak with a specialist at the library who's like in charge of helping with these kind of things. And I was like, oh, I can do that. That's right. You know, and I went there, and actually just the process of talking through what I needed to get done helps me answer my question. So sometimes you don't even need a specific book or a specific piece, like article of information. Sometimes you just need to talk with somebody and work through the ideas. And I'm sure that the staff at the libraries at Smith would be more than thrilled to do that with you as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Yes, absolutely. Moving on really quick. You mentioned in your NPR interview that these books are a love letter, that these books you have written are a love letter to kids that don't necessarily see themselves represented. What was your first book that you saw yourself represented in, and what kind of impact did that have on you?
Yeah, I think I don't know if it's absolutely the first book, but one of the first that come to mind is Amazing Grace. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with that one, but basically the premise is it's a little girl who wants to be Peter Pan in the school play and is basically told she can't because she's a girl and she's Black. And that was definitely a moment where I was like, oh, wow. So other people are told this too, that they can't do something or that maybe they're not suited for something because of either their gender identity or their racial or ethnic background. That definitely resonated with me. I hope that these books maybe provide, hopefully not the first time that kids are feeling seen, because they're meant for it to be for 7 to 10. So I hope we've moved beyond the 90s in terms of our standards of diverse children's books. But I also hope that for kids, their first feeling of being seen in a book is not necessarily related to racism. Looking back, it's kind of sad that my first, oh wow, she's like me, is because she was being, basically discriminated against, right? So when I wrote the books that I wrote, it's all about being brown and carefree and having fun and doing science. So I hope that message resonates really well with kids, the kind of, carefree Black joy.
Thank you. Yeah, our next question is about doing science and sort of creating environments. So you're creating a lab at UC Davis. Congratulations. And we're wondering about sort of your process of thinking about collaborative science and the culture that you might want to create there. How have you made sure in your career that you found yourself in environments that support you as a person and the kind of scientist you want to be? And how are you thinking about creating that in this new venture?
Yeah, I was really fortunate at Smith to kind of hit the ground running in a research environment in the lab I was working in, and as well as the broader institutional environment that was really supportive. So basically from the onset of my academic career, I knew the importance of having a good mentor, of being in a institution that had the culture that was supportive and collaborative. And that definitely does not exist in all places. So I think it's really important for people as they're kind of navigating their career path and finding places in which they can most thrive is to ask yourself, what do I need as a person in my specific career stage? And then you can find a mentor or an institution or, whatever that aligns well with that. And it definitely takes some research and talking with people, especially in my case, like in the sciences, reaching out to people who are in the graduate program, for example, that I wanted to attend and really getting firsthand students' experiences. I ended up joining my lab at Northwestern purely because the graduate student that I met from that lab said that he loved his PI, and how a PI just stands for principal investigator. It's just the lab boss, I guess you could think of it, but that he loved his PI. He was super supportive and a great mentor. And I knew fundamentally that the research that was going on in the lab was close enough to what I wanted to do, but that I needed the mentorship. I needed the support that that environment offered. And I also knew at the time when I was going to Northwestern, when I visited for my interview, I could feel the collaborative nature. I could feel the environment. It was just tangible. And so that was really important for me. And it's something that I hope to harness now as I transition to kind of creating my own lab environment. I really want to be a good mentor. I really want to be supportive. I'm thrilled to be at UC Davis. My interactions thus far have been outstanding. When I interviewed there, I could also feel something tangible in the air that showed me that this was going to be a place where I can thrive. So it's really important, one, to kind of figure out in an introspective way what you need to succeed, and then in an active way, seek that out in the positions that you go for.
I actually have a quick follow-up to that, because I know you talked a lot about mentorship. To you, what is a good mentor? And also you talked about how this person ended up being a great mentor. Was there, like, for the rest of the audience, is there like a formal process where you decided like this person became your mentor? Or could you expand upon those 2 points, please?
Sure. So I think I want to take the time to delineate between what a mentor and a sponsor. because what I'm realizing is that the best mentors are also sponsors. So a mentor is someone who gives you sound, sage career advice, who will, let's say if you have, in my case, like a grant proposal, who's gonna look over it, give you feedback, who's gonna, be a sounding board for your ideas, who's gonna give you criticism that is constructive, and that will help you grow as a professional or a scientist in my case. A sponsor does those things, but they do something else. They actively, what I like to call, get on the phone for you. So if you, let's say there's an award, they nominate you. Let's say there's a call for speakers, they put your name through. Let's say you're at a meeting with your mentor, they go around and introduce you to everyone that they know. So they take that extra step beyond just the career advice, which is very important, but they put you in contact with people and funding mechanisms or whatever that are going to allow you to achieve your goals. And it's through sponsorship that I got to where I am today, 100%. And that's something that I, again, also plan to do in my position as a PI. What was that? I feel like that was the first part of the question, and now I already forgot the second part of the question.
Well, this is great. This is a great segue into how do you find a sponsor? Do they pick you? Do you pick them? And same with mentors, I guess. Is there like a formal process where you kind of have to like define your relationship, or is there like, how does that work?
So finding mentors in some senses can be it's more simple. So when you go to grad school, you have to, at least for me as a scientist, I had to find someone's lab to work in, and that person is going to be my mentor. So the process of finding a mentor there was pretty straightforward. And kind of like set up for me. I didn't really have to do anything besides what I was supposed to do. I found outside mentors through kind of like fellowship programs that I've been a part of. So for example, actually while I was at Smith, I participated in what was then called the Underrepresented Science Students Program, which is now called AIMS, I believe. And through there, I had a peer mentor that was assigned to me. And then I eventually became a peer mentor. When I was at Smith, I took a class with Mary Harrington and became quite close with her through the class. And she's kind of become an informal mentor to me. Then that just kind of arose, organically, because we got along well and I enjoyed her style and I wanted to be like her when I grew up, And so I kind of kept in close contact and kind of maintained that professional relationship. So that's another way that you can kind of come across mentors. If there are people that you interact with on your academic journey that you respect and look up to, keep in touch with them. They also appreciate that, you know what I mean? And that is also fulfilling for them. So there's, formal avenues, kind of semi-formal avenues, and then more kind of organic or informal ways. And in terms of finding a sponsor, I feel like sponsors are usually also your mentors. And so that just comes down to, choosing someone who you see values your ability to succeed and also has the personality that will provide you with sponsorship. Because I don't want to convey that if someone's a mentor but not a sponsor, that they're a bad mentor, because that's not true. Mentors alone, just doing the basic career stuff is very critical and very important. But to be honest, in this day and age, things are competitive out there. And so you need more than just advice. You need like action. And some people's personalities lend themselves to that action naturally. Some people don't. And so they don't necessarily go down, they don't necessarily perform those sponsorship roles simply because their personalities maybe not that style. And so I think you can have conversations with your mentor if you would like them to engage in more sponsor-like activities or whatever. I think it's perfectly fine to have that conversation, like, hey, we're going to a meeting together. I really want to meet this person. Can you make the introduction? You know what I mean? Those kind of things. Or like, hey, I saw they put out this call for awards. Do you think I would be a good candidate? Could you nominate me? Those, there's nothing wrong, especially in this day and age, with self-promotion. You kind of have to, if you want, to succeed on your career path. It just kind of is the name of the game. And we can have a whole conversation on whether or not that's good But you know, in the end, it's kind of the name of the game. So definitely, I guess the kind of take home message in terms of finding mentors and sponsors is being proactive and kind of going for and asking for what you need.
Thank you so much. This is such a good answer. And it kind of segues directly into what I was next going to ask you, which was for new Smith students who are thinking about going to science, what are some things you wish someone had told you? But you just gave such great advice. Is there anything else you wish someone had sat you down and been like, listen, these are the other things you need to think about before you decide to kind of take that leap into that career?
In terms of science, I think that there's always something that you wish you would have known, I will say, but I don't know if there's a more effective way to learn, to learn something than by going through it, right? Like I think one of the things that I wish I knew in grad school, and even now, like to this day, so going from grad school to where I am now is a long journey, literally 10 years for me. I started grad school in 2010, and here I am 10 years later, finally in the professor level. So when they say it's a sprint, not a marathon, not a sprint, that's very true. But also kind of at each step along the way, I definitely doubted myself every step. I think because I wasn't sure whether or not I could make it. I didn't see many Black women in academic science positions. And so I wasn't sure if all of these people telling me I could do it, which at the senior level were largely white men, were saying that because they were able to do it, you know, does that mean that I can do it? I don't know. Like, I think so. I know I'm smart, but I don't think that there's anything that anyone could have told me per se. But I think looking back, kind of reflecting, knowing that there are a lot of ups and downs, but the name of the game is perseverance and resilience. And I think that's pretty true for most, you know, high level kind of careers that, you know, have a ladder that you can climb. There's definitely a large aspect that is just perseverance. Like I said, I doubted myself every step of the way. I thought about quitting more or less at every, you know, point. And not because I didn't enjoy it, but I just wasn't sure if I could succeed. And I think I got a really good piece of advice when I was in grad school, which was don't, you know, quit until you're forced to. Don't preemptively take yourself out of the game until you literally don't have any other options. And that was such good advice. I was not confident going on the job market. I did not think that I was a competitive candidate, you know, a year ago even. Now, after going through the process, I realized, wow, like I did have something to contribute. As I'm getting my feet wet, I realized, wow, I am actually good at this, you know? And if I would have listened to that doubt, that insecurity, I wouldn't be here today. And it's a tough call because, you know, sometimes you're insecure because you're just not happy with what you're doing. And so you have to kind of figure out if your doubts come from true fundamental, like, lack of fulfillment with what you're doing, or if they just come from like that little birdie on your shoulder that's kind of saying like, we could just, you know, go over here and do this instead. And it might be a more clear-cut path and a more, you know, secure path. But really, I guess, again, in a very long-winded answer, just kind of keep going, be resilient, and things work out. It's hard when you have a 10-year journey to feel that at every step of the way. But if you keep performing and doing everything you do rigorously and as excellent as possible, you're going to make it, even if it doesn't feel like it.
That's such good advice. I think there are probably other academic research scientists who write books for young people, but I don't know of any. And I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about that process for you. What do you like about it? What do you like about writing for young readers? And what was surprising or hard about it?
Yeah, so just to kind of give people the context, I write these chapter books. So here's you can't see with my background. Wait, hold on. There we go. I write these chapter books. They're called The Magnificent Makers, and they're geared for kids ages 7 to 10. I really, in writing them, wanted to combine my love for science with my love for reading all into one. I wanted to get kids excited about doing science and excited about reading. I wanted to provide a tool for teachers to help kind of close the science literacy gap, especially at the elementary school level. You know, teachers are pulled in many directions. There are many benchmarks they have to meet. So I thought that with these books, they could hopefully kill two birds with one stone, maybe. may be. I would say the thing that I like most about writing these books is kind of the same thing that I like most about reading, which is getting lost in the world, except this time I'm kind of creating it. But it's so fun to sit there and write. And in the beginning, it's like, okay, I'm just trying to get these words on paper, trying to get past like this first paragraph. But then once you get into the flow, you know, I fundamentally enjoy the world, the magnificent maker's world, and the characters, Violet and Pablo, and the adventures that they go on in the Maker Maze, and Dr. Crisp and all of her kookiness. I love kind of getting immersed in that world. It's a lot of fun. Also, this isn't really part of the writing process, but I love seeing kids reading them and enjoying them and knowing that I'm contributing to that. That is priceless. Like I can't think of something that's more gratifying right now, at least professionally speaking. You know, it's really, it's amazing, you know. The fact that I can do that with brown and black characters being on the cover also really, really hits home. What I dislike about it, I don't know. I don't know if I dislike anything, if I'm being perfectly honest. I mean, I dislike, I guess, if I get frustrated, like writer's block, but, you know, when I can't think of ideas, that's definitely annoying. Or sometimes trying to fit in time to write, like being a full-time scientist while being also a kids lit author can lead to scheduling challenges, you know, and I'm a morning person. So if I haven't written anything by noon, I'm not writing anything that day. I can edit maybe, but I can't create. And so perhaps, you know, finding the right balance and making time is the part that's more frustrating. And then of course, if I make time and I'm sitting there struggling to get the words out and I feel like I've wasted time, you know, but even that, I guess it almost loops back around to the previous question and realizing that it's all a process and you kind of have to take the good with the bad and just enjoy the whole thing because it's not just the good, it's also the bad. And I wouldn't lose the good in order to not have to deal with the bad, right? So I think that's a very important thing to remember as, especially if, you know, thinking about students writing these term papers. And I remember how, you know, it's just a struggle sometimes, right? It's a struggle to get your words out, especially, you know, at this stage in your undergraduate career, you're still a novice writer, you know? I didn't get really good at writing until halfway through my PhD. You know, I was always a good writer, but it's just, you know, gotten better and better and easier, even with the series. The amount that I struggled with book 1 is far less than the amount I struggled with book 3. And I recently submitted a final draft of book 4, which will come out in 2021. And that was a breeze, comparatively speaking. So, you know, it's just a whole process, and enjoy as much as you can all facets of it and what they teach you.
We're coming to a close of our event, but I just wanted to say, Dr. Griffith, I actually have a lot of elementary school teachers in my life, so I showed your series to them, and they're incorporating some of that in their classrooms, and they really like the book. So I just wanted to give a quick heads up on that.
Thank you so much for the support.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for being here with us now. We really have appreciated this chance to learn about your journey as a researcher and a thinker and how library research has been a part of that. I just want to give a last plug for everyone watching or listening to this at this point, that librarians are here to help you on your journey, that at any point, if you just want to talk through your ideas, if you're sick of figuring out how to cite something, if it's much more complicated than that and you think that you kind of have the wrong topic for your paper and you need to think of something else, you're never ever in this alone. And I know that we're all in this strange time where we're staring at our screens instead of walking into Nielsen Library or Young Library, but the librarians at Smith College are no less with you, and we really want to make sure that you know that we're available for you. So you can always email us, you can always go to the library's webpage for information about how to get more help, and we want to be a part of that. So Dr. Griffith, thank you so much for being a part of this. To members of our audience, thank you so much for participating. I hope everyone has a really great evening, and then a good weekend coming up too. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
Good night, everybody.